it's one of the most dastardly things because we allow it. We actually allow these listening devices from companies that we know we can't trust. I mean, sure, you can shop at Amazon. I certainly do. But you trust them to have a listening device and a video device live and recording and listening at all times in your home? Now, again, you do you. It's important for us to be, take responsibility for the decisions that we make. But I find it kind of striking that we would allow it. That we as Americans would say, you know what, this is a good idea for me. I like this. I think this is a wonderful idea to have a listening device and a video capable device on in my home at all times. I hope it means you're never running around in less than full coverage, nightgowns, pajamas, etc. That you're basically saying I want to have a public viewing capability in my home. I think it's a horrible idea. I think the people who are most susceptible to having them in their homes are people who are seeking convenience and like the idea of technology serving them and serving them well. And I get it. The idea sounds fun. And I used to really enjoy, 15, 20 years ago, where in the movies they would show a fully automated home where a person would say, home, do this, or turn on the lights, or cut these things off. And what would happen is the home would respond. But what we've come to find out is that not only do you give up a lot of your own personal freedom and privacy, but you don't know who's on the other end of that device watching, looking, listening, and responding with whatever they want to do to your personal information. I think it's a violation of our privacy, but it's one that we give them access to. We don't give them permission to violate our privacy, but we give them access by putting these devices in our homes. It's not smart. The convenience factor is completely outweighed by the fact that once they have the information, whether it's video of you in your home, video or audio of you in your home, they have it, and there's no way for you to be absolutely certain that they've deleted it, gotten rid of it, what they're doing with it. Now, there could be, if you're like me, I always think, anyone who's listening in on my cell phone is really, they're not doing their best with their time. They're not living their best life, as the youth of today like to say, because it's so boring, the stuff that I'm texting about. We currently have with my family text group, we're talking about how much weight I've lost and whether or not my dad should continue to send us huge containers of German candy and pastries and things like that. That is not exciting. It is just not anything that anybody would want to know. But that's not the point. The point isn't that no one would want to know it or that my life is really super boring and, what some people would call lame. It's that the information is there and I don't have complete control over it. And I know that going in with texting. But the audio, you and your family talking to each other, the audio of you, just sitting around watching TV and conversing back and forth, or the audio of you discussing your bills or, the latest diagnosis on a health issue or something like that, something's got to be private. And the only way to keep it private is to say no to these devices. And I'm talking about the Amazon Echo, the Amazon Ring, the other ones. I don't even know the names of all of them because everyone seems to have their own little one du jour, like their device du jour that they like to have. And I also, if we have to buy a television, we don't need one now, but the next time we have to purchase a television because one goes out, we're going to be making a decision between a smart TV, which has the same capability as these devices. It can listen to you, it can hear you, it can video you, because you can do video phone chats on these TVs. So you have to wonder, like with our laptops, it's not as bad. You close your laptop, power it down, or you leave it in the office. It doesn't have access to your whole home. A television that's in a big room in your house where you're often going to be present is going to have a much bigger impact because you're spending more time in there than I spend in this office with this laptop. And the fact that they keep saying in the movies and on TV that anyone at the NSA or any security agency, and even I guess at, like, let's say your carrier's AT&T, can go in and turn the microphone on your phone on, and once they do, your phone doesn't even have to be on. So the power doesn't have to be to your phone. The only way to stop it is to take the battery out, and good luck taking a battery out of an iPhone without, completely destroying it. That means that you have to leave your phone in, let's say, the office. We use that as an example. Leave it in your office, power it off, and shut the door, and then go have your private conversations in another room. We don't often think about that. And again, if you're living in Boringville like I am, you might not be as concerned about this, but it is something for us to consider. It's a responsibility for us to know that we have given away some of our privacy by even using smartphones and laptops and smart TVs. And that, in my opinion, it goes a step too far when you get these personal assistants that respond to your every call. Those devices are always listening, and you don't know if they're always recording or transmitting the information to some other place. So I kind of covered that. I was going to preview it, but I covered it. And I'll give you any other salient facts. So again, welcome into the program. You are home here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We're so excited to speak to you today. The call lines are open, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Today's daily confession is Leviticus 19:31. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. What I'm trying to share with you on this one as we go out of this segment is that we often will get, society tells us and kind of ropes us into, you should get your palm read. You should talk to a medium about that. You know what's really fun is playing with Ouija boards and all of those types of things. When we consult with spirits, we're basically saying that we think their opinion is much better than actually going to God and asking him to answer our prayers. And I want to be really specific about this because I think people, I'm not insulting anyone. I don't have any hatred for anyone, but I definitely think it's something that bears reminding, especially with our culture where witchcraft and things like that are really, it's almost exalted at this point. It's wrong, and we shouldn't do it because it opens us up to being defiled. It also is like sticking our fist in the face of God and saying, I know someone who could answer my questions better than you can. Trust God with your questions. He will answer every single time. We'll be back with Jon Gabriel right after these messages.
Are you still stuck on the healthcare roller coaster? Still paying those high premiums? And strapped into huge deductibles? Not knowing what's around the next turn? Well, then let me tell you about a sound, sensible healthcare choice that really is affordable. It's MediShare, the healthcare sharing solution people like you have been trusting in for more than 25 years. MediShare members report saving around $500 a month on their healthcare costs, and they never pay for things they don't believe in. Time to say goodbye to that healthcare roller coaster and say hello to MediShare.
Call *345 to find out how much you can save on your healthcare. MediShare. Call *345. Message and data rates may apply. That's *345.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. Our youngest daughter, Holly, played the flute in her high school band. Karen and I attended their concert one evening, and it was fantastic. They played some very challenging pieces. In fact, for the finale, they played an extremely difficult piece, and they nailed it. As it came to the end, there was this great crescendo. The audience stood to their feet in spontaneous applause, giving these young performers a standing ovation. They deserved it. They did a marvelous job. Acts chapter 7 is a very moving passage to me, especially near the end of that passage. It is a story of one of the early church leaders, Stephen, who was stoned for his bold statements concerning Christ. Listen to these powerful words. Verse 54 of Acts chapter 7. Now when they had heard these things, they were enraged, and they ground their teeth at him. But he, full of the Holy Spirit, gazed into heaven and saw the glory of God and Jesus standing at the right hand of God. And he said, Behold, I see the heavens opened, and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God. This is incredible to me. Normally, Jesus is seated at the right hand of God. And here the Son of God gives one of his followers a standing ovation. The message is powerful. It's clear that when we're faithful, when we take a stand for Jesus, when we do the difficult stuff in the midst of hostility and persecution, God says, you have my son's attention. He stands for us. He recognizes us, and he gives what we need to go through those dark hours. Here's what I want you to remember today. Perhaps you are suffering and going through some persecution because of your stand for Christ. Be assured, if you are standing for him, he is standing for you.
Join Crawford Loritz tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. We had a little smidgen of a technical difficulty at the very beginning of the show, but we are up and running. Everything's fantastic, and I'm so glad to have you here with us on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Certainly for myself, speaking for myself alone, it is a blessing to be with you and to have the ability to broadcast here on American Family Radio in all of the different places around the country that we are heard on a daily basis, and to be a part of the fantastic lineup here. Sandy Rios, Tim Wildman and his morning crew, and then obviously Brian Fisher and so many others, including Abraham Hamilton III. Wonderful lineup, Washington Watch. I can't name them all out of my head, but I'm just cataloging the ones that come to mind immediately. It's a blessing to be here in amongst this fantastic group. So right now it's my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Editor-in-Chief of Ricochet, Jon Gabriel. Jon, thank you for joining us today. Happy New Year.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
It's good to talk to you. When I saw the topic, I was like, oh yeah, I want to, like, it's an appropriate time for us to kind of run this thing through. So you and I are both totally inappropriate because we are conservatives and we're out in the public. We know we are not invited to things. We don't sit, we're not invited to the table. We're out. But when you say no host is pure enough to host the Oscars, we're talking about mainstream leftists like Kevin Hart and others who really are popular and bring a lot of money to Hollywood and have been inappropriate and will continue to be inappropriate because it's funny. They're no longer woke enough to, say, host the Oscars. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it really is. You cannot be woke enough. It's just they keep shifting the lines, and that's the weird thing about it. It's almost like the left is setting up this new secular religion, basically, and they haven't really figured out the rules yet. They keep making them tougher and tougher, and if you violate them, or if you violated them, say, 20 years ago when they didn't exist, boy, they get mad. And there's, you can apologize and apologize. There's no forgiveness. They don't have that either. So it's really strange to see, and I think Hollywood itself must be shocked at what is this monster we created, because they thought it was great when they were using it against the right, and now it's just consuming their whole industry.
But isn't this something we said back when? You know, it's probably worth noting, maybe 7 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, we were all saying on blogs, if you are willing to roast anyone, like if you're willing to throw the conservatives out of the camp for cracking jokes that are inappropriate or saying the truth unabashedly without concern for people's feelings, at some point this will come back to bite you. And everyone's like, no, we just are against bigotry. We're against you because you hate America and you hate Americans. And so off you go. And now we've been out in the cold for a while and we're liking it out here. We have our parkas on. And now the liberals are arriving. And it's kind of funny.
I know. And some of them are saying, wow, how did this happen to me? I'm one of the quote-unquote good people. And this isn't fair. And, yeah, it's just really wild. And I guess the Oscars was having a really difficult time finding a host to begin with. And then they finally offered it to Kevin Hart, who's made, untold millions, billions of dollars in the movies, made all these people very, very wealthy. And, then they say, hey, 10 years ago you made a joke that hurt somebody's feeling, apologize for it, and he had already apologized for it several times in the press. And they said, if you don't apologize yet again, we're going to fire you. And he said, you know what, I'm apologizing, and I don't want the job.
Well, I thought what he said was, I've apologized enough. In my opinion, it was an epic display of toxic masculinity that he displayed there. He was like, I've already apologized, so... I'm good. I don't need to do your stupid show. I'm already famous. So,
Right. And that's the thing. He was doing them a favor. They weren't doing him a favor by letting him host. It's not like he needs the money. He doesn't need the exposure. He's already this mega star. He's got fans all over the world. He doesn't need the Oscars to get famous. He's already famous. And so when he walked away, that was pretty much it. And I think with Kevin Hart, too, it's like, I'm not saying he did this because he's this rock-ripped conservative or anything like that, but some, and I don't care where you are politically, some people, when you tell them to kneel before you, they're not going to do it. And that's basically what he did. I'm not kneeling before that Oscar statue. I don't care if it's cold. And boy, yeah, the left is still mad at him, and now nobody is willing to host because, boy, it doesn't matter. Everybody's made a mistake, and now you're not allowed to make mistakes anymore.
But yeah, you're right. I'm totally in agreement. So, John, the only thing is they're not really mistakes if people are still saying the same kinds of jokes. So the same kind of jokes that Kevin Hart did back then, he occasionally does now in his stand-up, because what we all do is we see him as the bunny rabbit in that kids movie, and he, we hear him in the family type stuff that he puts out, and we just forget that he came up through comedy in clubs, and so he's not a clean comic. He curses a lot,
Right.
a lot of profanity, and a lot of the jokes would be considered vulgar by, I know for my tea set, my lunch set, the chicks I hang out with, we would not just blast that in our cars. Teenagers or no, husbands or no, we just wouldn't listen to it. But there are millions of Americans who enjoy that kind of humor, and they're still enjoying it. There are still comics out there making jokes about homosexuality and anything else under the sun. Black people, fat people, skinny people, you name it, they're making the jokes. They're making jokes about white people. I mean, they're equal opportunity offenders, and they're not stopping. But you're right when you say that there's these Hollywood types, they don't want their Twitter feeds examined. They're like, well, I'm not going to host because then they'll just look at my Twitter feed. And it doesn't even, I don't even know that they pay you to host the Oscars. I thought the payment was the fact that you were standing on the Oscar stage as the host.
Exactly. That's you don't get paid for it. You got to do a lot of prep for it, all the writing and all that. And that's the thing too, is even if they didn't dig up something in your past, anytime somebody hosts it, they're just subjected to all these people yelling at them anyway. Did you hear that joke he said? Did you see the way he looked at that cute actress? It's just endless. And who needs it? Kevin Hart's like, yeah, I'll just relax in my hammock and right outside of my mansion, and I'm good to go.
I'll keep making money because I got comic shows booked for the next, he's still doing stand-up comedy,
Right.
which is what people don't get.
I know.
They could get fresh content from him to be angry
an
about.
hour-long set, it never quit.
Yeah, so let's delve into this a little further, because I'm wondering, do we see a nexus? Because whenever I expect liberals to eventually get to a place where they recoil from their own madness, they always prove to me that I've underestimated how far they can go. Like they don't have consequences and then change behavior. They just go ever deeper down into the abyss. Do you see them coming to a place where they say, we got to let people have their past because our country has evolved on this issue or that issue, whatever that means? Or do they continue to just knock everyone out until there's no one left?
I think they're going to continue to do this for a while, which is just crazy. Like you said 10 years ago when we're blogging, we're like, guys, you know where you're headed with this. Now it's coming to pass, and they're still, if you criticize them over their behavior, the majority of them still just yell and scream. And I think you have a lot of people, too. It's like we've seen other comics in hot water for inappropriate behavior, inappropriate jokes. And what you see is, especially stars who have been around for, say they're in their early 50s or something like that, they're the ones dumping on these people the most, especially like white male comics. They're just dumping on these people bad. And I think they look at it and go, I got about 5-10 years left in my career anyway. I just want to make sure I'm not taken under before I retire, basically. I just need to get a few million in my bank account, and then I will be attacked for something, but it'll be okay.
Right,
So
because I'll be richer than.
bandwagon.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have this place where we're working and we start to get annoyed with our workplace, and you're like, well, do I jump ship and start over somewhere else, or do I just continue on here? And I've heard people who are in their 60s say, look, I'm retiring at 68 or 70, or I've got my plan. Once I execute on that, I won't worry about this anymore. So this is, a temporary situation for me. But in Hollywood, that happens much more quickly. They don't last as long, not all of them. And specifically speaking about this crazy phenomenon, they don't actually care what our culture looks like. They don't care if they improve it or make it worse. They just want to make their millions, like you described.
Exactly. They live in a bubble. If you, anyone who's visited L.A., you see all the sandy beaches and the sunshine and the palm trees. Yeah, in certain neighborhoods, it's gorgeous. It's just like, it's unreal. It's like Fantasyland. And then you go a couple streets away, a couple streets inland, and it's rough. And, there's homeless camps everywhere. And they are really kind of creating this crazy socialist medieval society where you have the haves and the have-nots, the lords and the serfs, and they are recreating it. But restaurants, they hang out with their fellow people, and when they have to drive between, homeless shelters and, homeless tents, encampments everywhere, they just don't seem to notice it. They don't seem to care because they're in their little bubble and they love it there and they want to stay there.
So I know this is like the age-old question, but what is the appropriate response? Culturally, we see Americans really pulling away from Hollywood. That's the rise of Amazon and Netflix produced films, which is really just the same people going to a different building and making their content. But people are pulling away from the traditional Hollywood modes of their products because they find most of it so repugnant, and the fact that a lot of it was created by people that we can't even say their name without like chills going down our spine, like Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey, really disgusting people. So we get away from that, but the cultural rot continues. Like, that's unabated. There's nothing being cleaned out. No one is finally standing up and saying, look, we're going too far. We want people to be treated kindly, but this is censorship. There's no freedom of speech in this. So what is the answer for regular Americans who don't want to support these people? Like, I don't watch the Oscars anymore, but it doesn't seem to be having an impact.
Yeah, well, and the ratings are going down. Hollywood's receipts tend to be going down, if you go kind of decade by decade. I think a lot of it, kind of like you, what I focused on, talk about uncool, I'm reading books, especially really old books and books about God and books about kind of these foundational principles. And when I get, I don't know, the hot new TV show that I have to watch, quote unquote, comes on, I'm just like, yeah, I want to finish this. And really just kind of creating, whether it's writing, playing guitar, doing whatever, it's just a lot more fun to hang out with the kids and get involved in their life and get involved in the real world. I think part of the problem is, too, there's so many outlets. We both know Twitter and Facebook, and then, I don't know, online video games and TVs and movies and podcasts, and there's just so many things out there. And it's kind of overwhelming. And I think a lot of us are being forced to just kind of pull back to keep our sanity. It's just too much going on out there. And that's the thing. It's not like you totally isolate yourself from the culture, but make sure to just turn everything off for a while. That's what I get to do, thankfully, is everybody in my family goes to bed early, and they all go to bed, and at about 9 or 10 o'clock, they all go to bed. No TV, no sound, just like, peace and quiet, and I can focus on the important things. So I think creating our own stuff is huge, and that's one fantastic thing about the Internet is, if you create a video or something, you can upload it yourself. But then, too, just kind of focusing on the important things. And, yeah, it seems like it has to come back, but, yeah, it's not going to be led by Hollywood. It's going to be led by average people like you and me and your listeners, and just doing the right thing. And all these people who are running this crazy rat race looking and going, what's different about you? Why aren't you completely stressed out and miserable 24/7 like we are?
That is a great point. I find that, because I used to be one of those people, I know growing up, I mean, you might have the same experience. For our family, when the Oscars would come on, we'd actually, we'd get all of our stuff done because it was always on a Sunday. So we'd go to church, come home, we'd eat, we'd get everything cleaned up and get ready for Monday. And then we would have that time to watch the Oscars. And for us, it was a chance to see who was wearing what and our favorite stars. Maybe they would win for a movie that we liked. And we knew that it was worlds away from our life, but we liked watching. And it was my mom, my dad, my sister, and me, and we would watch it. And my parents would, obviously, they'd comment on the women whose dresses were, my mom would use, colorful language to describe what kind of women of the night they look like. And my dad would say, while those dresses are attractive, men will think certain things about you if you wear things like that. So they would try to use teachable moments. But John, it was fun. And I've never had that experience with our kids, because when they got old enough to watch it, by then I was completely offended by some of the movies put out by Hollywood types, their obsession with bashing conservatives and Republicans. And I felt like it wasn't a good use of our time. And now it's to the point where when I see other people talking about it, I'm kind of like, oh, are you still watching that? Wow, I would never watch that. So yeah, it's the relevance is eked away. It's just.
Yeah, and we were the same way growing up. We would always watch that or the Emmys or the Grammys, and we would always have at least heard of all the movies.
Oh, yeah. We'd seen them all, yeah.
We didn't have the money to see every movie that came out, that's for sure, but, we would at least know about them, whether it's Grammys, Emmys. You're just kind of aware wear. We had a shared culture. And, yeah, if something, there was usually one weird moment where someone would be political or something, and everybody would kind of chuckle under their breath, and, that was odd.
Yeah.
It
was like they'd frown.
Outrageous outfit.
Yeah.
It was always like one person, and that was it, though. It wasn't offensive. It wasn't, vulgar. It wasn't attacking fellow Americans 24/7. And, yeah, I've never watched these award shows with my kids. Never. And it's just they don't even know they were on. They could care less. They're just like, yeah, it's some old thing. Totally out of touch. I've never heard of any of these movies.
Right.
They're just not into them either.
My kids I'll go, so we were watching this old movie from like 20 years ago, and Mel Gibson was in it. And I said, oh, my goodness, it's Mel Gibson. And the kids said in unison, as if they'd planned it, who? Like in a dead voice, who? I said, Mel Gibson. He was like a big star in Hollywood. By the time I got to the word Hollywood, I saw people out of my peripherals. Their little hands were reaching for phones, and I'm like, don't pick up your phones. The movie's about to, the movie's starting. Don't get distracted. And they're like, oh, we just thought you were going to start talking about Mel Gibson. I'm like, well, he was a star, but don't worry, I'm not going to talk about him to make you guys not watch the movie. They are not interested, and our kids are pretty typical when it comes to, their consumption of the culture. I, for one, John, am glad that you are still there, faithfully and dutifully cranking out original content and reading books and staying sharp for those of us. We need you out there, Jon. Jon Gabriel, editor-in-chief of Ricochet. Thank you for coming on.
You bet. We need you, too. Thanks so much for having me here.
Thanks, and I'll talk to you again soon.
All right.
Yeah, I really enjoy Jon's commentary on this stuff. It's right where we are. Can we get back? We'll be talking to you, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Keep it here.
Can solid teamwork building principles apply to all of life? Here's Tony Dungy, author of The Soul of a Team, with today's uncommon moment.
As a coach, I organized what we called the mock game before the start of a new season. The special teams coach and I ran a team made up of backup players. The rest of the coaching staff took the starters. I wanted to see the young players and the backups handle the mental adversity of going against the starters. Who would be able to perform well even when their team was outmanned? Who would go out there and do their jobs no matter what? The mock game was designed to help every player fully own his own role. But that was just one day. Those who accomplished the most were prepared, present, and positive, and were proactive each and every day.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of The Soul of a Team, from Tyndale House. More at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
We want America to be a godly nation.
The Awakening with Bishop E.W. Jackson.
It's never been an issue of race. It's always been an issue of the human heart.
A passion to see America rise and shine like a city that's set upon a hill.
The problem in America has always been sin.
Don't miss Bishop E.W. Jackson and The Awakening. Weekday mornings at 9 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Romans 13:14 says, "Clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the desires of the flesh." So what are you clothing yourself with? Whether we realize it or not, what we allow in our temples affects our way of living. We can't feed ourselves junk and expect to hear from the Lord. Clothe yourself with the righteousness of God at urbanfamilytalk.com.
This is Poll Parade with Fox News Director of Polling, Dana Blandon.
The border wall. It's a big deal to President Trump.
Walls work.
Let's shed some light on that. We talked with more than 100,000 voters nationwide for our Fox News voter analysis survey. It shows a majority opposes a border wall. However, the president's core constituents like it. 65% of working class white men, 79% of white evangelical Christians, 82% of Republicans. They all favor the wall. wall. Among Democrats, it's 13%. By a 69-point margin, Democrats are more likely to think immigrants help the country than hurt it. The opposite among Republicans. By a 28-point margin, they're more likely to think immigrants hurt the country. And while Democrats name health care as the most important issue facing the country, for Republicans, the top spot goes to illegal immigration. And an overwhelming majority of GOPers approve of the job President Trump is doing on the issue. I'm Dana Blanton, and that's your Poll Paris.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Much of government we could just get rid of. The New York Times says shutdown curtails FDA food inspection. Oh no, we'll be poisoned. But if you read the smaller print, you'd learn that 80% of food inspection is done by the Agriculture Department, and they're still inspecting. But more important, the main reason food is safe is not government, it's competition. Fear of getting a bad reputation inspires most food producers to employ more safety inspectors than government requires. Beef carcasses undergo hot steam rinses and microbiological testing that go well beyond what government demands. Yet politicians want us to think it's all about government. Where government work is needed, privatize much of it. Even security work, like what the TSA does, is done better by the private sector. Go to San Francisco's airport, you'll notice the lines are shorter and they move more quickly. And passengers say the screeners are nicer.
People here are friendly and willing to help.
Not only are they nicer, the TSA acknowledged that they were better at finding contraband. That's because they're private contractors. They have to be better or they might get fired. Government never fires itself.
So that's John Stossel, and his commentary on this is fantastic. I posted it over on the Facebook page for Stacy on the Right, and I hope that you'll check it out. He's so entertaining. He's fun to watch or listen to, which is what I recommend for anyone if you like doing streaming services. And it's fun for us to put the show on live stream and all of that. But wherever you're tempted to tune in, you can always just hit play and listen and go on about your daily work. It can be an addition to what you're doing as opposed to something that draws you away from getting things done. So I just recommend that to you. But it's a good commentary by John Stossel. His commentary that private is better, it's been echoed over and over and over again, and studies have shown it to be true, that private corporations that have a reputation on the line always provide better services than the government. The only difference there being, of course, our national defense. And the reason our national defense is top-notch is because we have an all-volunteer military run by people who also have reputations on the line. When America doesn't do well abroad militarily, it's damaging to the morale of the troops, and it has an impact. And so they're motivated by love of country. But that is a constitutionally mandated activity, defending the homeland and waging war. And so it's understandable that it works that way. I do have some more information for you on this Amazon Ring, but I want to get to the phone calls. We so value our listeners here. And if you're just tuning in, welcome to the show. Happy Tuesday. And I also want to point out that I did thank everyone last week, but I just want to say thank you one more time. We're just shy of 3,000 ultrasounds that are paid for by you. 100% of what you gave last week during our preborn campaign goes to provide ultrasounds to young women who are abortion-minded, and we are so grateful to you. I would just like to express our sincere gratitude for the listening audience here. You're fantastic. You're wonderful. And your work, especially the donations for the ultrasounds, that's kingdom work. That's the kind of stuff that we will be getting well done, my good and faithful servant, for when we go into the other side. So it's the kind of stuff we want to be involved in. And we're so excited that you did this with us. So thank you, listening audience, for providing those ultrasounds. We exceeded our goal, and that's fantastic. Praise God. He gets the glory for all of it. So right now I want to go to the phones. Chris in Georgia. Hey, Chris. Thanks for calling the show today.
Hi. Yes, I just wanted to make a comment about some things you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
With them viewing us, being able to watch us through our phones and other cameras and devices and so forth. And I recall that the Bible says, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." And I just want everyone to know that we don't have nothing to fear. And if they want to view our lives as Christians let them view our lives and see the blessings of God flow. That's what I'm saying.
That's a great perspective, Chris. I don't disagree with you. Like I said, I live in Boringville, and I hope that they would also see me praying and reading my Bible and everything else. But I just don't trust what they do with the information. But living right before God is a good insulator and a protector against these devices and everything. You have a good point there. Thank you, Chris, for calling the show. How about Diane? Thank you so much for calling in today.
Hi.
Hey. What's your comment?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay. I was just calling with a comment about the whole Kevin Hart thing. And I was just wondering, I just wanted to point out the hypocrisy of the left, that why Seth MacFarlane gets a pass on everything that's on his show on TV is, making fun, poking fun of Muslims, Christians, Jehovah's Witness, gays, pedophiles. I mean, he makes terrible, terrible jokes, on his show, Family Guy, but he gets a pass.
Seth MacFarlane. Oh, Family Guy. Yes, because I was trying to think of what he does. You're right. It's a double standard. If you're making them money and they like you and they don't want to attack you, then they'll leave you alone. But for Kevin Hart, he had to be made to bow down, and he was like, "I'm not bowing down," and it's their loss. You're so right. It is a double standard, but the only answer, in my opinion, to all of it is, first of all, we've got to start being better about what we watch and consume, and number two, it is true that when they're coming for your enemies on the issue of free speech or something like that, it's always okay. But then when they start coming for you, you're like, well, somebody, come on, you guys, this is wrong. But by then, you may be the only one left. And so they were gleeful when the conservatives got knocked down. But now it's their turn, and they seem to be a little bit less excited about it. Thanks for calling the show, Diane. I appreciate that. I thought it was funny that he was so ambivalent about the whole exercise, that as soon as they started, going to him and demanding an apology, he was immediately like, no, I'm not doing that. And I already apologized. And he even went through that whole thing. Everyone evolves on issues and so. I don't even think he's evolved on it. I don't think if you ask Kevin Hart one-on-one, so you've changed your mind, you really do, you're one of your chief aims for your son is for him to be a homosexual, he would not say, oh yeah, I've evolved on that, I'd be fine with him being a homosexual. He'd say, no, I want my son to be heterosexual like me. I want him to be in the place where he can make a family and he can live a life that's much easier than making a choice that puts him on a path of destruction. He would definitely say that privately. He may no longer say it publicly. I think he's still making jokes about homosexuals in a stand-up routine. And so nothing has changed. He apologized once because it was something that was a requirement, and now it's over. And he's not apologizing anymore, and he really hasn't changed his mind. Which just goes to point back to, I said this years ago, that no matter what laws are passed, homosexuality, transgenderism, this whole movement to criminalize speech, people aren't really accepting it. They're giving lip service to it because they think it will benefit them at work or wherever it might be that they're experiencing this. But deep down, they haven't accepted it. They don't want it promoted in their own family. They'll accept it if a family member is already, engaging in it. But if it's something that is there for their own child, they're not promoting that. Only the very wildest and outlandish of people are promoting it, like Hollywood stars adopting kids and then making them live as the opposite sex. That's something they're doing. But for mainstream Americans, no one has really changed very much on this, except that they're more tolerant because they're being forced into it by these fascists. True fascism, where you have no choice. You have no option to speak your mind freely or to share information or to even disagree. That true fascism is coming straight from the left. I wrote about it for America's First Freedom magazine for the NRA last year, and even went on the Huckabee show to talk about it on TBN. It is real, this fascism, but it's not coming from the right. I want to give you the details on that Amazon Ring thing. The Intercept reported last week that Ring provided its Ukraine-based research and development team virtually unfettered access to a folder on Amazon's S3 cloud storage service that contained every video created by every Ring camera around the world. So every device that has a Ring, or every home that has a Ring device, I should say, every video that's ever been made on that device is stored in a folder in Amazon's S3 cloud storage. That folder was then, basically they give you access, meaning if you try to access it and it's not ready, you get a message saying you have no access. But if they give you access, that means these people in the Ukraine were emailed or given a phone call, or they were mailed something, probably email, saying, look, here's a folder with all of these video files in it, use it for your research. And so they did, obviously. Why wouldn't they watch all the videos? So these highly sensitive files could be easily browsed and viewed. Downloading and sharing these computer video files would have required little more than a click. In other words, your little listserv that you're on, talking politics or talking whatever, and it's a bunch of you and your friends, has nothing to do with work, and you get access to this database, you could easily click and download it to your laptop and then text those video files to anybody you wanted to laugh at people, make fun of them, mock them, or point out interesting things in the video. No kind of notification to the Amazon Ring users. The video files were left unencrypted. The Ukraine team was also provided with a corresponding database that linked each specific video file to the corresponding specific Ring customer. So if you wanted to know exactly whose video you were watching, they need only click over to an additional database that was provided to them, and they could look up the customer's information. Now think about all of the information that Amazon has on each of us if you're a customer. They have your name, your phone number, your address, and they usually know how many people are in your family based on your purchasing habits. They also have an income profile on you, and they know some of your political leanings based on the books and other items that you purchase. They can cross-reference the information that they have on you with any apps that they've developed for Facebook, because remember, Facebook has on numerous occasions made your user information on Facebook searchable to app developers. So apps that you've used on Facebook that might have been in the Amazon portfolio can then be used to create a more full picture of you, and now they have the videos that you made yourself that they can literally watch you, and they know all of this information about you. I'm telling you, so much of what we're trying to protect is already out there, but the live video feeds, I just reiterate, why do you need a device, a computer device, to search things for you when you can just still use your little fingers? They still work, and it's still good for us to use them. We don't have to have everything at a voice command. Ring also reported providing similar access to executives and engineers in the United States, which allowed unfiltered round-the-clock live feeds from some customer cameras, regardless of whether they needed access to this extremely sensitive data to do their jobs. So they could have a window open on their laptop or their desktop at work and be watching these live feeds of people's homes. The people are at home and doing whatever. They might have just been watching their cats, what cats do when parents aren't home. They might have been watching just that. Whatever they were watching, they had access to it, even if it was not a part of their duties. They didn't need it. An unnamed source told The Intercept that if an engineer knew a reporter or competitor's email address, they could view all of their cameras. Employees joked around about spying on their coworkers' home cameras. So you kind of wonder, if you work for Amazon, do they require you to have a Ring? So, you know, you have it at home and you may not even really need it, but you have it there and it has to be hooked up and accessed so that they can spy on you. As advertised on Ring's website, Ring allows you to monitor your home from your smartphone, tablet, or PC with the added ability to speak to anyone on your property from anywhere. Now, I will admit, right here on this show, when I saw the commercial for this and the lady, there were two guys on her doorstep about to steal her package, and she said, "I can see you. I'm home. Get off my front." And by the way, this information is being transmitted to the police. I thought that was pretty cool. But that was a camera on the outside of the house meant to deter theft. This is talking about the cameras on the inside. Ring's customizable motion sensors let you focus in on the most important areas of your home. You'll get instant alerts as soon as Ring detects motion. You'll always be the first to know when anyone steps foot on your property. Ring lets you monitor every corner of your property with a video doorbell at your door and stick-up cams around the house. You can create a ring of security around your home, your entire home. Ring has denied claims in the Intercepts report, with a spokesman declaring Ring employees never have or never did provide employees with access to live streams of their Ring devices. Of course you didn't, Facebook Junior. You know they did. They're just lying. I mean, remember the good old days when companies used to get caught out and they would admit it and somebody would get fired and they'd move on? Nowadays, they're just like, we didn't do that. I don't know what they're talking about. This Intercept stuff is just not even cool. Who believes that? Who actually believes that? All right. I wanted to just briefly cover, we have about a minute left here. I wanted to briefly touch on, I was able to tune into the White House. They had a conference call for grassroots leaders, and I just want to reiterate how strongly the president is on staying the course on the shutdown. There are some benefits. They're like unintended consequences that are beneficial to the Trump administration from the shutdown. Obviously, public opinion is not great, but when you commit yourself to an aim or a goal, you have to really hunker down and see it through. And I think the president's resolve is strong on this. And for that, I greatly appreciate and support what he's doing to get border security for our country. And we'll talk more about that on the show tomorrow. God bless you from the Heartland. Stacey Washington, host of Stacey on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We'll be back with more. If you're sticking around, if you're leaving us, God bless, and we'll be with you tomorrow.
Family Talk.
The sexual revolution is falsely promised to satisfy the human heart.
God has a better way, if we follow God's prescription.
Dr. Michael Brown offers hope for those trapped in the downward spiral of sexual immorality. The Freedom of Sexual Purity is a powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute. Get your copy today at afastore.net.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. The UK Parliament has rejected Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal with the European Union. The vote was 432 to 202. The UK opposition leader has since called a no-confidence vote in government. That vote is planned for tomorrow. A terrorist group is claiming responsibility for an attack in Nairobi, Kenya. Fox's Paul Tilsley has more from Johannesburg, South Africa.
An unknown number of people are believed to have been taken hostage after 4 gunmen stormed this upscale hotel and office complex in the wake of at least one explosion. There's been continuous gunfire for long periods. Dozens managed to escape. Some of those fleeing the scene had been shot. Smoke from burning cars can be seen. The Islamist terror group Al-Shabaab has reportedly claimed responsibility. 71 died in 2013 when Al-Shabaab attacked the nearby Westgate shopping center.
President Trump's pick to lead the Justice Department has been facing questions from lawmakers during his confirmation hearing. Rachel Sutherland reports from Washington.
Referring to reports, the FBI investigated whether President Trump was working for Russia. Republican Chairman Lindsey Graham asked Bill Barr if there are any checks on the agency opening investigations into sitting U.S. presidents.
Not outside the FBI.
Okay, well, we need to look at that.
Democrat Chris Coons wanted to know what Barr would do if President Trump asked him to fire special counsel Robert Mueller.
Assuming there was no good cause?
Assuming no good cause.
I would not carry out that instruction.
Barr says he does not believe Mueller would be involved in any kind of witch hunt.
A conservative activist is not happy that charges have not been filed against a far-left Democratic donor who might be responsible for the deaths of 2 black men in California. Chad Gerning has more.
Ed Buck is a prominent LGBT activist and mega donor to the Democratic Party. Recently, a body of a second black male victim was found at his West Hollywood apartment, 17 months after another deceased black male was found there. Police are investigating. Now, concerned citizens led by Democratic activist Jasmine Canick are calling on authorities to prosecute Buck for murder, even though his attorney claims the death of the second victim was an accidental drug overdose. The Los Angeles County authorities are even reopening the investigation of the death of the first victim, which was also initially ruled an accidental drug overdose. Jesse Lee Peterson is founder and president of the Los Angeles-based Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny, or BOND.
This guy is a Democratic donor. He's not going to be attacked by those people because he's one of them. He supports them. And so they're not going to go against him because they don't want to lose the money. I noticed that Black Lives Matter, they're not carrying on about this the way they would have done had it been a white male Republican.
Peterson says that's all we would be talking about.
There would be riots, the so-called LGBTQ, whatever they are, and they'll be out in the streets. But they don't really care about black people. These people are hypocrites. They're liars. So I hope people open their eyes up and start to see that when they do all that marching and rallying and pretending that they care about black people, it's all lies.
I'm Chad Groening.
The drugstore chain Walgreens is working with Microsoft to improve care as more companies seek ways to manage patient health, cut expenses, and improve quality. The companies did not detail financial terms of their collaboration or how much they will spend on research. Insurers and care providers are shifting their focus more toward managing care and keeping patients healthy instead of waiting to treat them when they become sick. In final news this hour, this year's Super Bowl is in Atlanta, and that city is taking every precaution to ensure the safety of the entire event. Fox's Gernal Scott has more.
Atlanta Police Chief Erica Shields said her officers, along with many more resources, have one goal for the February 3rd game.
Position ourselves so that we can react immediately to whatever scenario we are confronted with.
Heavily armed officers will be on hand to prevent any crime or acts of terrorism, but Chief Shields says some challenges are beyond their control.
Such as what's happening with our federal government shutdown and with the long TSA lines.
Fans are urged to consider that in their travel plans.
Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
Coming next week on The Dwelling Place. Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
As Attorney General, my allegiance will be to the rule of law, the Constitution, and the American people. This is how it should be. This is how it must be. And if you confirm me, this is how it will be.
Manafort was trying to get paid for his work on behalf of Ukraine. Flynn had his own dealings. But it is not added up to anything of the central question again. Was there anybody, was the Trump campaign aware of or coordinating with the Russians in their effort to meddle with the election? So far, there's been nothing on that, and I'm led to believe, don't expect there's going to be any.
The government shutdown continues longer than any in history. I'm told this is a crisis.
Government shutdown crisis.
Another Trump-generated crisis.
This crisis. Crisis. It's causing chaos, confusion, pain. It's just too much.
We shouldn't shut down the government over a dispute. And you want to shut it down. You keep talking about it. The last time, Chuck, you shut it down. No.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Wow. So glad to be with you. Hour 2 of the program. And we have so much information that we want to impart to you right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. UrbanFamilyTalk.com/Stacy is where you can find a repository of podcasts that rivals, well, other repositories of podcasts. Yeah, you can find all the podcasts for the show there. You can also find them at AFR.net. And you can live stream the show on, come on, we can run down the list, but it's a lot of different places. I do have a programming note as far as the blog is concerned. So the blog is going under redesign. And due to that, I basically, my own neglect, I didn't turn off my auto blast function on the newsletter. And so the same newsletter has gone out a couple of times. And I saw some people unsubscribing, and I was feeling really terrible about it because my intention was not to send that newsletter out multiple times, but it was my own error, and I have to kind of blame it a little bit on the redesign because I've not been doing much over there because I'm waiting on them to finish that. So my apologies. And if you unsubscribed, I totally get it. But if you haven't subscribed, please do. I have that under control now. And we will have a new newsletter out within the week with new information and White House picks and stuff like that. So it's at StaceyOnTheRight.com. And yes, we're still doing the website redesign, but the company had a kind of bout with the flu, or a bunch of the employees came down with the flu, and I totally get how horrible that is. So my completion has been pushed off a little bit, and I'm anxiously awaiting to see the finished product. So today on the show for hour 2, we're going to be chatting with Nan Hayworth. She's a former congresswoman and board member for Independent Women's Forum. You know, Independent Women's Forum is an amazing organization, and we are so glad to have her come on and talk about the shutdown. We are also going to be getting into why U.S. classrooms are beginning to resemble arcades with tons of screens, and it's intentional, and what these organizations are trying to do with these kids, and why you should or shouldn't be interested in putting your kids there. And we're also going to continue to talk about the shutdown and the hypocrisy of the Mueller report, the investigation, the whole schmegagony, my own word made up, of course, of ridiculousness that we're seeing with what is, in my opinion, a witch hunt. Now, Mr. Barr has to say it's not a witch hunt because he's been nominated to be the Attorney General of the United States, and he'd never make it through confirmation if he was using the same terms as the president. But we all know there's no way the president's nominating him if he thinks that the Mueller investigation is completely legitimate and on track, because it started from a dossier, which is an opposition research document. And again, it kind of echoes the comments earlier by Jon Gabriel, who was brilliant, by the way, when he was saying that, you know, you have these people that can never be woke enough. Well, in our government, if you can investigate someone based off of a piece of paper that someone wrote and made up out of whole cloth, you know, a few hundred pages or whatever it was, then so can you. And so can any Democrat. You know, the Democrats will not always be able to get away with everything that they put out. At some point, there has to be a reckoning. And for those of us who know this and understand how things work, that God's word is true, no matter whether you're Democrat, Republican, you know, you're purpley spotted, or you're Caucasian, or, you know, permanently tanned, God's word is true. It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true for Americans and Guatemalans, and it's true, universally true. We can rely on it. And it talks about justice coming and how we shouldn't envy the wicked when they get away with their ill doings, because they will receive the recompense of their actions all the way. God's mercy is for those who are repenting. It's new every morning, but the implication there is it's not just new all the time. Whether you're sinning, you could just say, well, God's grace covers my sin. No, it doesn't. You'll be allowed to progress forward until your time is up, and then you will be getting justice for what you've done. So God is not mocked. It's going to come. It's going to happen. So I want to give you guys this audio. This sound is from ABC. It's actually a little bit of a mashup. It's about them blaming Republicans for government shutdowns, no matter who's responsible. And make no mistake about it, President Trump said he would own this shutdown, but he was saying that in the context of, I'm willing to do it to get border security. He wasn't saying I own the shutdown and it's my fault and it's not a good idea. He's standing with his principles because he's in the right. So here's this bit of audio. It's number 1.
The center of the shutdown, the battle over a border wall. According to our latest poll, 53% of Americans blame President Trump and Republicans for the stalemate. 29% blame congressional Democrats. But the poll also finds that support for the border wall has been rising over the last year.
Right now, day 24, and no one knows what the president is willing to sign, where he is willing to compromise, if at all. So far, the only proposal that he's been discussing is this possibility of declaring a national emergency to go around Congress to build his wall. But there are some signs that Republicans may be concerned that this stalemate is hurting the party. Lindsey Graham, one of the president's top allies, is now suggesting that the president temporarily reopen the government just so they have some more time to negotiate. George.
But, Mayor, one of the reasons they haven't felt perhaps enough pressure so far is that same poll shows that 82% of Americans say they haven't been inconvenienced at all by the shutdown. Only 18% said they're personally affected. Of course, that could change if we see more reports like we just saw from Victor and David.
Yeah, right now, George, those numbers show that lawmakers may simply not be feeling enough pressure yet, but that may be coming because while just 18% say they feel personally affected now, according to our poll, 79% say it would be a serious problem or a crisis if this were to continue. And if past shutdowns are any indication, it's when that public pressure simply becomes too much for lawmakers to bear that they finally come up with a solution.
And we are already in record territory. Okay, Mary, thanks very much.
And these workers live all over this country, so I think it's just a matter of time before these lawmakers start feeling this pressure and taking it back to Washington.
Notice how they're discussing this from the perspective of the federal workers and them pressing their constituents. They're not expressing any kind of acknowledgement of Americans who are currently pressing their legislators for border security. Maybe the reason why Americans aren't as concerned about, let's say, the Democrats lie that FDA inspections aren't going on is that the part of the government that shut down the FDA inspections for that part of the government only comprise 20% of all of the inspections. The other 80% are done by the Department of Agriculture, which is fully funded. The other thing is the private sector does the bulk of the inspections on their own, under their own dollars, and they do much more rigorous types of inspecting, much more technologically cutting-edge inspection types because they don't want outbreaks of E. coli and things like that to be attached to their brand. Remember, every time Tyson Chicken has a recall of some sort, what happens is when I go to the store, the Tyson Chicken, there's so much of it. Like there's so much Tyson Chicken. And then on the other side or near it will be the chicken in the bags by our local grocery store. And what I instinctually do, it's not even something I control anymore. I just noticed it. When watching this video, I thought, and the last time I was at the store, well, I was there yesterday. Oh my goodness, I'm there so much because these teenagers can really eat. And I bought some chicken. And while I was there, I instinctually reached for the brand name chicken of the store that I was shopping at. Now, part of it is just a natural desire to support the local business that employs people that live right here in Missouri. But the other part is that they have pointed out on numerous occasions to me at the checkout line when I've bought meat at the meat counter in the grocery store, they always say, you know, the meat that we sell here in the store that's under our brand is from our state or the Midwest region, and it is packaged and, you know, everything that it goes through happens in one of their own branded plants. So if someone gets sick off of the chicken with a store brand name on it, they really have a lot to lose. And the grocery store business is already in like almost zero profit territory where they're doing everything they can to cut costs so that they can maintain some profit and stay open. So the worst thing in the world is for them to have an outbreak of some kind of anything related to their branded items. So they're even more careful. And that's the private sector. So I just want to stress again, it's not that I don't think we should have FDA inspections or the, you know, FDA as a department is not one of my pet peeves, you know, having an FDA. But I do think it's incumbent upon us as consumers of news and information to listen to what these people are saying to us and not just accept it whole cloth. We got to listen to it and say, oh, so they want us to think this shutdown's an emergency. They want us to think that food's not being inspected and we're not going to have chicken or beef or wings for the Super Bowl. That's what I actually saw someone had printed online. No chicken or beef or anything like that for the Super Bowl. I'm like, there's still going to be chicken and beef. Like there's still going to be meat because the majority of the inspections aren't even done by the FDA or the FDA or the Department of Agriculture. They do inspections. They're federally mandated to do it. But the bulk of they don't inspect all of it. Just think of how many places sell meat. How many stores, how many different places you can go to buy raw food that's meat. The FDA is not inspecting all of that. They're inspecting a percentage of it, random inspections. The rest of the inspections are done by the the company itself, the employer. They're inspecting it to make sure that their standards are being met so that they don't have, you know, food illness outbreaks. I mean, it's kind of fascinating that people would even buy into that. The minute I heard, well, we ain't going to have any meat for the Super Bowl, I thought that's ridiculous. We will totally. Well, first of all, if you're buying from your local person, I encourage you to find a farmer in your local area who will sell you a side of a cow so you're not constantly at the mercy of going to the grocery store to buy your meat. But second of all, you can also buy a side or a quarter of a hog So you can have pork in your house, and if you're not a pork eater, you can also buy portions of other kinds of meat. And you can even contact seafood distributors that are in Alaska and get crab and fish, salmon, haddock, anything you can think of. You can buy it in bulk, and they will create a special order for you and send it to you freeze-dried. But it's fresh, but they freeze-dry it so you can take it right out of the box and put it in your freezer and have your own fresh fish. We haven't gotten there yet, but that is on my goals, to not have to pay, because crab legs and some certain kinds of fish, like swordfish, are so expensive, but you get better pricing when you buy it in bulk from the actual fishery that brings in the meat, and they do all of the work themselves. So again, this is America, the land of options. But no matter what options we are taking, if we're buying everything at the grocery store or Sam's Club or not, this is propaganda. It's being used to manipulate emotions and get poll results that favor one side, that we're in some kind of emergency because 1/4 of the federal government is shut down. It's ridiculous. So I have this, it's just a bit of sound from Jon Gabriel, and it's about the Mueller report. So let's turn to that really quickly. I saw this story circulating this morning, and I thought it was fascinating because now that we've had this trumped up fake piece of fakery come out of the New York Times last week about President Trump being investigated and thought to be a puppet of the Russians, you have ABC's Jonathan Karl, again, hardcore leftist who operates on the media side of the DNC. He says, I'm hearing the bombshell Mueller report won't be a bombshell at all. It's number 4.
What I am getting is that this is all building up to the Mueller report and raising expectations of a bombshell report. And there have been expectations that have been building, of course, for over a year on this. But people who are closest to what Mueller has been doing, who have interacted with the special counsel, caution me that this report is almost certain to be anticlimactic. That if you look at what the FBI was investigating in that New York Times report, you look at what they were investigating, Mueller did not go anywhere with that investigation. He has been writing his report in real time through these indictments, and we have seen nothing from Mueller on the central question of, was there any coordination, collusion with the Russians in the effort to meddle in the elections? Or was there even any knowledge on the part of the president or anybody in his campaign with what the Russians were doing?
You see? So let's wait on our nothing burger. I have all my condiments on the side ready to eat my nothing burger. It's going to be delicious and calorie-free. The Mueller report. We'll be back with Nan Hayworth after this.
80% of the time, an abortion-minded mother who views an ultrasound or sonogram of her baby will choose life. Here's the story of Candace.
The sonogram sealed the deal for me. My baby was like this tiny little spectrum of hope. And I saw his heart beating on the screen. And knowing that there's life growing inside, that sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to Mom. Thank you to everybody that has given these gifts. You guys are giving more than money. You guys are giving love.
There are currently preborn centers which do not have an ultrasound machine. Would you sponsor a machine today? Dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Or go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Your love could save a life.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
What if Christians and Christian institutions that provide so many social services went on strike? That is a question that Addison Del Mastro asked in The American Conservative. He reminds us of the book by Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged. She proposes the question of what would happen if entrepreneurs in America decided to go on strike because of an increasingly overbearing regulatory state. The book documents the dystopia the country falls into. While I doubt that Christians and Christian groups will ever go on strike, it is a great thought experiment. Addison De Mastro explains that many of the services Americans take for granted are provided by churches and Christian organizations. One example is health care. John Stonestreet, in his Breakpoint commentary, wrote, "No Christianity, no hospitals. Don't take Christian contributions for granted." Catholic, Baptist, and Methodist hospitals can be found all over the country. He documented that in at least 30 communities, the Catholic hospital is the only hospital within a 35-mile radius. Education is another area where Christian involvement has been key. Christians run thousands of private schools that usually meet or exceed the quality of the public schools. The Catholic Church or various Protestant denominations or churches run more than 7 in 10 of the private schools in America. Churches also minister to the needy and marginalized in society. There are soup kitchens and outreaches to the poor and homeless. Churches also provide meals for the homebound. They provide marriage counseling as well as psychological counseling. Christian organizations place children in foster care and adoption, and Christian groups run pregnancy resource centers. You know, Christians aren't going on strike, but if they did, America would be a very different place indeed. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For more information about issues covered on Viewpoints, visit pointofview.net. Pointofview.net.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you for being with us today here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. UrbanFamilyTalk.com, AFR.net, and StacyOnTheRight.com are where you can find out more about what we're doing and keep up with us. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome the former Congresswoman and board member for Independent Women's Forum, Nan Hayworth. Nan, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's always a privilege, Stacey. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm so interested to hear your take on what's going on with the shutdown. When I turn on to the mainstream media apparatus of the DNC, CNN, MSNBC, and et cetera, it sounds like the world is ending. Nan, our lives are over. No meat for the Super Bowl. No more fun. No more parks. Nothing. But in reality, I'm looking around and everything looks pretty normal. I do have a heart for the people who are like furloughed and not getting paychecks.
Sure, of course.
But I kind of wish that the article I can't remember who wrote it, but I did. It's a senior Trump official over at the Daily Caller says he hopes a long shutdown smokes out the resistance, and talks about just the absolute process bureaucracy that could be crippled by riffing a lot of these people when we approach the 30-day mark.
Well, you know, Stacey, this is an issue that is a mixed bag. Obviously, there are, when this kind of a shutdown occurs, it affects the departments of government for which appropriations bills weren't passed. And you can well ask yourself, why were not all the appropriations bills passed by the House of Representatives, right, when they're in charge of funding, and yet, you know, various partisan squabbles end up slowing down the whole process. So this shutdown that affects certain important functions, you know, TSA, obviously, you know, there are some delays going on there. You know, we do want the FDA to be able to inspect our food supply. You know, critical functions are going on, but in addition to the hardships for federal workers, which, you know, is obviously a real thing, there's just a general feeling that we could do far better. And I'm sure, you know, folks on the left feel that way, but, you know, as someone on the right, I would love to see the federal government cut down to size. I would eliminate whole departments, as a matter of fact, starting with the Department of Education, which has achieved no net benefit for the country in its 40-some years of existence. But, you know, Stacey, what's so frustrating is that even though President Trump voluntarily said, I'm going to own a shutdown if we shut down the government, which I, you know, retrospectively, I'd love to say, gee, Mr. President, you know, let it all sit on the Democrat shoulders. He said, if we shut down, this is your fault, right? Because you're the ones who said you'd fund a wall and voted for it over and over again, and now just because I'm president, you're saying you won't, right? But, you know, someone politically is going to blink at some point. And the question is, you know, who's going to have the hearts of the American public more effectively? I like to think it's going to be the president, but, you know, the Democrats are obviously sticking to their, I would say, their wrongful guns at this point. It's very frustrating.
Well, it is frustrating, Nan, because if they'd never voted for border security before, if they'd never voted to fund new bits of wall or anything like that, then I could say, well, they're sticking to their guns, their principles are intact. But they've just recently, all of them, and President Obama called it a crisis. So we don't have any space where they can claim that. I heard the president say, not even, I guess it was about an hour ago, or hour and a half ago, that he is absolutely firm on sticking to his guns. And I do think the Democrats will hear from their constituents when, and I do believe the RIF hammer is going to come down. And if employees are ripped and they lose their jobs because of the shutdown, they're going to call the Democrats and say, all you had to do was give them $5 billion and I'd still have a job. Now, they may eventually try to punish Republicans for it later because, over time, as Democrats, they'll stick to their guns. But in the short term, the Democrats are going to be the ones feeling the pain because the majority of government workers are Democrats. They're politically liberal. So if they're let go, especially if the riffing gets to a point where we're talking thousands of employees, not just teensy little bits, but like you said, whole departments. If we could see that kind of cutting going on, the Democrats would see, wow, we're playing right into his hands. He promised to cut the government down. We can't win on this. We need to give him some money so we can get out of this. I think they'd come to the table. Maybe. Could that work?
Maybe. Well, what else I think it should, and again, Stacey, and I know from having been there, this is a battle for the public, nominally the voting public. I don't want to sound cynical, but, this is a rhetorical battle that one side has to win. And I think the president should go after the Democrats' vulnerabilities in any way he can, not because, I want to see politics win, so to speak, but because he needs to be effective in pressing the case because our national security and immigration policy are at risk, and they are important, and he is coming from the right place on this. Yes, politics on his side, too, politics on the GOP side, but he's right. He was elected because people know that we have to do better. Here's what I think he should do, and I'm not alone in saying this. I would like to see the president, as he has already done, Stacey, he's already said, DACA, right? A big issue for the Democrats. They want to see DACA beneficiaries have a pathway to citizenship, at the very least to remaining legally in this country on a permanent basis. The president has already said he's willing to support that. That's something that I think he should bring to the table. He should say, look, I'd like the House Republicans to introduce a bill that the House Democrats can, then get on board with, in which we offer a path to legality and potentially to citizenship for DACA recipients, DACA beneficiaries, and we fund the wall as I have requested. And it's a lower funding level than you guys voted for in 2013 when you voted for $8 billion. Oh, and by the way, I'm also funding beyond that $5 billion, $5.7 billion. I'm funding $5 billion worth of care. I mean, you can read the provisions he's asked for. Care for the folks who are waiting for their cases to be adjudicated at the border, including providing them with shelter and providing them with medical care. He's asking for administrative funding. He's asking for personnel and technology. He's asking for all the right things. But I'd love to see him put DACA there on the table, because then if the Democrats reject that, Stacey, which has been so important to them, they're already blatantly political in just opposing President Trump. We know that. I mean, it's quite obvious. But I think if he does that, then he could say, look, I've tried every way I can to meet you guys halfway.
Well, he has. He's verbalized that. I think he's tweeted about it, and he's also said verbally that he would definitely be willing to do DACA. I've seen a lot of discussion from others like Marco Rubio and some others who have said, well, that was the offer, but they rejected that. So now we're not talking about that. We're talking about pure border security. We're not going to put amnesty back on the table. I tend to agree with that tack, which is, it's an issue to readdress at a later point to negotiate for something more. But right now, it's a pure, clean request for money to shore up parts of the border that are currently being used by drug traffickers to destroy America. 70,000 opioid deaths, last year alone is an emergency.
Absolutely.
It's a crisis. And, what's funny to me is that the Democrats are able to, like, for instance, this most recent media story where they took Steve King to task for some ill-advised comments. I actually don't think Steve King is a racist. I actually don't think he's a white supremacist at all. They just took some ill-advised comments of his and they crafted them into a narrative where the Republicans responded and took away his committee assignments. But Steve King is a guy who supports the president's agenda. He supports America first, national sovereignty, and our way of life, which, our way of life is not white supremacy, but we do have a Western, civilization type ethos thing going on here. And we respect that. And so it's funny how they're able to just kind of shoot a marble and knock one of our guys off. A strong supporter of the president. But we have, I think, 4 or 5 people now. A couple of them are wearing hijabs. They're all for BDS. They're all anti-Semitic. A bunch of them are now executing litmus tests on our nominees for cabinet appointments and things like that, asking Catholics if they'll be able to withhold, their belief system, which is unconstitutional. And they're getting away with all of that. They're not even reprimanding them. By that instance, Cory Booker and Kamala Harris should be stripped of their committee memberships because they use Catholic, the fact that you're a Catholic as a litmus test.
Knights of Columbus, right?
Yeah,
Columbus is a problem for them.
Right, right.
No,
if you're
I
just
agree.
a Catholic.
It should be, right. If we're going to express our manifest our disapproval of certain types of advocacy, let's put it that way, and I read the New York Times article. I know Steve King. In fact, I agree with him about the 14th Amendment completely. I don't think birthright citizenship should be granted to infants born to people who are not, who don't have at least one parent who's an American citizen. I don't think that we should accommodate that. So I get that. I'd also have an amendment that allowed someone who was a naturalized American to become president. So, I'd put that 2 different ways. But I know Steve, no, I don't think at all that Steve is a racist. In the New York Times article, it certainly seems to, it's phrased in a way, and he hasn't necessarily argued the phrasing, but, it's phrased in a way that makes it sound as though somehow he's asking why, white supremacism is, why can't we talk about that anymore? And it's sort of like, everybody on the Republican side, understandably, is very, very sensitive about that image. And Steve, I think, is the sacrifice, just as Al Franken was the sacrifice in terms of the Me Too movement, if you will. And safety politics is, it's not scientific, that's for sure.
No, it isn't.
No,
but I just think we could do better. Nan, I have to say,
I agree.
This is a case of, because so here's a little personal anecdote. I have a neighbor who, she's one of the only liberal friends I have left, because most of my liberal friends from before, when they found out that I was a conservative, they said they couldn't trust me anymore. You are free to believe what you believe, but they somehow couldn't trust me anymore, even though their kids had been spending the night at my house, and their kids knew the inside of my minivan better than my kids, and all that stuff. All of a sudden, there's this mistrust because how could I have been this all along? And so some of them I'm still friends with on Facebook, and I actually applaud the courage of remaining friends with someone like me on Facebook when you're a hardcore liberal. I actually have respect for those people, but the person-to-person contact is down to 0. And so this neighbor of mine, actually, I was walking down our lane, and she was coming home in her car, and she stopped, and we chatted, and I had not actually seen her in like a year, face-to-face. She began to confront me about my support of a local candidate for school board who is, on the right, and she was running for school board because we have all this Planned Parenthood infiltration in our local school district, and they're spending more time teaching the kids how to put condoms on bananas than they are the basics of education, and their numbers are falling. I know. So my kids aren't there, but I pay taxes there, Nan. And so I attended a few of the school board meetings, and I'm supporting this woman. Well, later, the leftists executed a hit job on her, similar to the one on Steve King. They took a couple of her Facebook posts and painted her as a racist. And then the NEA took those Facebook posts and spread them all over St. Louis, the area where the school district is. And they were able to defeat her. And so she said, I can't believe you would support her. And I'm kind of really disappointed. And I said, why? Because you said she's a racist? She said, yeah. And I said, what does that even mean? If you think she's a racist, maybe you're a racist too. Now, obviously, my neighbor's white. I'm black. And her eyes got big, and she said, well, I know what you mean. I'm always afraid of someone saying I'm a racist because of some comment or, something that I've said. I said, And there you have what just happened to her. I don't think she's a racist. And even if she was, she opposes Planned Parenthood, and that's more important to me. And I mean, I promise you, Nan, if she wasn't securely buckled into her car, she probably would have fallen over in shock because I said that. But it's something that we need to start doing more often, which is,
oh, I agree.
You know, stand up to this. This is not what we should have done. And I'm disappointed that Tim Scott has kind of adopted, and I really respect Tim Scott greatly. Senator Scott is an amazing person.
Tim is my friend. We were freshmen together.
He's amazing.
I love him.
But this is different. This is a, I feel like the left is using his earnest attempt to bring us all together to tar and feather people who aren't really a concern for us. Our concerns are the white supremacists, not people who just been called racist. So and that's kind of off topic.
I think, Stacey, truly it is politics. It is the tenor of the times. People like Tim, and people like so many Republicans in the House GOP are, they have sincere beliefs in the right ideas for our country, and they are trying to survive in an atmosphere in which so-called, the broad middle, the independent voters. I know, I represented a swing district in the state of New York as a Republican. And, are we treated differently than Democrats are? Much differently, vastly differently. But just as with your neighbor, people go around and they poke their fingers in their ears as soon as they hear Republican, right? They're like, I don't want to hear what you have to say. So we're trying to prove, look, we're proving our bona fides, basically. It's like, look, we get it. We understand. And no, we don't embrace, we don't endorse, we don't. And sometimes that means that,
but things like this happen. I'm just disappointed. Yeah. Well, you know what? Former Congresswoman Nan Hayworth and board member for Independent Women's Forum, thank you so much. I enjoy it when you come on the show, and Happy New Year to you.
It's a privilege to join you, Stacey. Thank you for your voice, and a very happy and healthy New Year to you.
All right. Talk to you again soon. We will be back with more right after these messages. Keep it here. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. In 1 Samuel 21, we see David fleeing from King Saul. David uses every trick in the book to preserve his own life, from eating the priest's holy showbread to lying about why he is in the vicinity. At one point, David pretends to be insane, thinking that doing so will prevent angry servants from killing him. Emulating these deceptions are not the point of David's story. Being in fear for his life made him do things he would not normally do. But the story doesn't end there. David wrote Psalm 34 during this difficult time, singing, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." This is a beautiful way of describing the true nature of walking with God. In the low times, when all have forsaken you, continue to bless the Lord. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
On the Hour of Intercession, we have guests on a regular basis, and sometimes our guests have titles like doctor or pastor, but sometimes they have no title at all.
Pastor Joseph Parker of the Hour of Intercession.
One powerful truth to recognize is that every believer has a testimony, and they can teach you something about prayer as they share their own personal prayer journey.
Listen weekday afternoons at 1 Central here on Urban Family Talk. Chris Brooks.
We cannot underestimate the responsibility of evangelism. That is why shows like this, Equipped, which is committed to equipping you every day to live, share, and defend your faith, are extremely important, because anyone who does not confess Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior is outside of God's saving grace.
Equipped, weekdays at noon Central on Urban Family Talk.
I'm Chad Pergram with the Speaker's Lobby. You never quite know who might be the key player to orchestrate the next big deal in Washington. Republican South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham has long worked behind the scenes to try to engineer a bipartisan deal with fellow senators to end the government shutdown. Among the ideas Graham floated, more money for the border wall and then a DACA fix alongside other immigration proposals. Graham told Fox on Thursday he was working on a possible deal unilaterally because House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had, quote, dealt herself out. She's a non-player. Graham huddled earlier this week with Democratic West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, and then other GOP senators like Susan Collins of Maine and Lamar Alexander of Tennessee. And then the hammer fell. The president intervened, personally killing any effort by the South Carolina Republican at a larger deal. Graham then declared, quote, I've never been more depressed about moving forward. Graham said he supported Mr. Trump's efforts to declare a national emergency to get the wall. I hope it works, said Graham. With the Speaker's Lobby, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
President Trump has sought no assurances, promises, or commitments from me of any kind, either express or implied, and I have not given him any, other than that I would run the department with professionalism and integrity. As Attorney General, my allegiance will be to the rule of law, the Constitution, and the American people. This is how it should be, this is how it must be, and if you confirm me, this is how it will be. Now let me address a few matters I know are on the minds of some of the members of this committee. First, I believe it is vitally important that the special counsel be allowed to complete his investigation. I have known Bob Mueller for 30 years. We worked closely together throughout my previous tenure at the Department of Justice. We've been friends since, and I have the utmost respect for Bob and his distinguished record of public service. And when he was named special counsel, I said his selection was good news, and that knowing him, I had confidence he would handle the matter properly. And I still have that confidence today.
That's Attorney General nominee Barr. He's actually testifying today for his confirmation hearing to be the Attorney General of the United States. And I think it's interesting that he had to go through all of that rigmarole in his opening statement. Since then, obviously, this is going on while we're broadcasting live here today. And I've gotten a lot of text messages from people saying, you know, again, Cory Booker being nasty, again, you know, Kamala Harris being nasty. And it's interesting because they just don't understand how they look. I'm sorry, not Kamala Harris, Dianne Feinstein. So here we go. I want you to listen to the rest of his opening statement. It's just a quick little soundbite here. And then I have a piece of audio for you. We're going to go into our Wayback Machine, and we're going to crank it up with our hand crank on the side, and then the little sparks will start flying, and it's going to spit out some audio from long ago that Democrats have never cared about. And I have one more bit of interesting. I'm going to throw a number out at you before we listen to this. $145 million. Are you wondering what that number is? Who received that amount of money? Who gave it to this organization? Well, it ties in with what we're talking about here with the Russian collusion, the supposed status of our president as some kind of Russian plant, that the Russians are, you know, like he's a puppet for them. All of this ties together. I love how neatly this all wraps up into a sweet little box. Let's first listen to the final little bit of audio from AG nominee Barr, number 6.
Given his public actions to date, I expect that the special counsel is well along in his investigation. At the same time, the president has been steadfast that he was not involved in any collusion with Russian attempts to interfere in the election. I believe it is in the best interest of everyone, the president, Congress, and the American people, that this matter be resolved by allowing the special counsel to complete his work. The country needs a credible resolution to these issues. And if confirmed, I will not permit partisan politics, personal interests, or any other improper consideration to interfere with this or any other investigation. I will follow the special counsel regulations scrupulously and in good faith, and on my watch, Bob will be allowed to finish his work.
So who said Bob wasn't going to be allowed to finish his work, first of all? I mean, I know he's saying that for the Democrats because they're all apoplectic about the idea that Donald Trump might dismiss the special counsel. But if he's innocent, he doesn't have any reason to dismiss them. The Democrats just like having this cloud hanging over the president's head because it kind of derails the agenda. It's something they can talk about whenever they don't like his accomplishments. The fact is, it's a well-known fact now that no one will acknowledge that the president's economy, his economic moves have created an economy, the possibilities for an economy that is so strong that we actually have more people available to come into this country to work and people fighting and clawing to get in here because we don't even have enough Americans to fill all the jobs. And so that's another issue. We don't need more foreigners. That's not what the problem is. But this idea that they get to keep calling the president, just go to Mediaite. It's so disgusting. It's crazy pants. All of these statements about President Donald Trump, these are things that are being said on the media right now about the president, about the commander-in-chief, about this person who has not been convicted of any crime. MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle loudly wonders if Trump has something pretty extreme on Lindsey Graham to get his support. Former Republican Representative Mark Sanford asked why we don't hold Trump to the same standard as Steve King. Representative Jackie Spear mocks Trump's claim Democrats are calling him to defect over the shutdown in his dreams. Dianne Feinstein accuses AG nominee Barr of an effort to undermine Bob Mueller. After what you just heard there, which is clear, he doesn't want to undermine Bob Mueller. He could care less. He's going in. He's going to oversee what's going on, but there's not going to be any undermining going on. By the way, just in case you're wondering who the opposition research really is, or the opposition really is, opposition party, John Kasich, one-time Republican nominee for president, has just joined CNN as a political commentator, as has former senator from the great state of Missouri, Claire McCaskill. CNN. Actually, sorry, John Kasich joined CNN. Claire McCaskill is with NBC, the parent company, and MSNBC. So you know she got a pretty penny for that. Allison Camerata clashes with Ken Starr. How could you find facts on Trump-Putin meetings without investigating? Just insulting things on here. All of it against President Trump. And I know that they're allowed to have their opinions. Colbert rips Trump. A man with an orange face and cotton candy hair should not call Bezos a bozo. Seth Meyers mocks Trump's alleged evidence noshing. They may need a search warrant for his belly. Come on. Democratic congressman, I feel like I'm on the set of The Manchurian Candidate. This is beyond bizarre. No, it's not beyond bizarre. The only thing bizarre here is the Democrats' behavior. So now the Wayback Machine is cranking up. You can hear it, right? You hear the Wayback Machine. It's cranked up. It's at full tilt. And guess what piece of audio we found? It's audio of former President Obama speaking to then President of Russia, Medvedev. It's number 3.
This is my last election, basically. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah. Yeah, I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir and Medvedev.
Meanwhile, Iran's missile threat came up in a conversation the cameras picked up between President Obama and outgoing Russian President Medvedev. Mr. Obama asked for space on the missile defense system the U.S. and Russia disagree on.
This is my last election, basically. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah. Yeah, I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir and Medvedev.
He said, "This is my last election. After my election, I have more flexibility." Medvedev said, "I understand. I will transmit this information to Vladimir."
Not a peep from the Democrats. Now, one more thing. You might be wondering when I said 145 million, you're thinking that's a lot of change, right? That's a lot of loot. What could she be talking about now? What dastardly bit of dirt could she possibly have dug up now? Well, I didn't have to look far to dig it up, first of all, because this is commonly known information. The Russians have never donated a penny to President Trump. With his campaign, none of it. Not one thin ruble. Which, by the way, coincidentally, because I don't know if they're still dealing in rubles, I think they are, but I have some rubles upstairs. They're not a lot of them, just a couple. from when I went to Russia as a kid. I was a 9th grader when we went to Moscow, the capital city, and Leningrad, which I think is now called St. Petersburg. Yeah. So been to that country, check that off the box. And also 145 million is the amount that the Russians gave over time to the Clinton Foundation. Again, the Clinton Foundation has received $145 million from the Russians, and we've never seen an investigation on that. Meanwhile, the Trump Foundation has been shut down for so-called improprieties. Do you see the double standard here? Do you see why, you know, Jon Gabriel and I were laughing and giggling, but the fact is, the double standard of prosecution should be something that concerns us all. The fact that it doesn't just means when it's their turn, the rest of us will just be sitting on the side like, well, y'all didn't care when it was Donald Trump, so you certainly can't care now. They will not have a valid place with which to launch an objection if it's okay for Hillary Clinton to do all that stuff, and they're just making stuff up about President Trump. So I talked about this article, and just really quickly, the census question issue is going to go to the Supreme Court. This judge, and a rogue activist judge, actually said that the question itself isn't a problem, but Secretary Ross's decision to add a citizenship question to the 2020 census, even if it did not violate the Constitution itself, was unlawful for a multitude of independent reasons and must be set aside. He wrote this in a 277-page opinion. It's going to SCOTUS. It's ridiculous that he thought he could enjoin the Trump administration from adding this question. The question is this person a citizen of the United States? The question has not appeared on the census since 1950. Why? Because back then we didn't have a huge illegal immigrant crisis in our country. We didn't have somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 million people living here illegally. And Americans back then would have said, that's war. We're going to deport these people. Citizens have to help these people get out. But not now. No, not now. Now citizens want to help these people stay here. They're actually helping them evade deportation. Now, the Daily Caller took the rare step of publishing an anonymous op-ed at the request of an author who is a senior official in the Trump administration. And he says that the long shutdown can smoke out the resistance. And he talks about how he has worked in the federal government for just eons worth of time, you know, compared to the rest of us who, you know, I've been doing radio for 6 years. You know, it's a lengthy amount of time for this guy. He says on an average day, roughly 15% of employees around him are exceptional patriots serving their country, 15%. 80% feel no pressure to produce results. If they don't like what they're told to do, if they don't feel like doing it, they don't. They can't be fired. They avoid attention, plan their weekend, schedule vacation, work their second job. They do research for the next job they're going to go get. Some do this in the same position for more than a decade. So they avoid doing their actual job or what they've been asked to do for 10-year spates of time. They do nothing that warrants punishment and nothing of external value. Their work day is errands for the sake of errands, administering, refining, following, collaborating on process. Process is your friend, as the delusional civil servants tell themselves. That's what they tell themselves. And even senior officials have to gain approval from every rank across their department, other agencies, and work units for basic administrative chores. Process is what we serve. Process keeps us safe. Process is our core value. It takes a lot of people to maintain the process. Process provides jobs. In fact, there are process experts and certified process managers who protect the process. And then there are the 5% with moxie. They're career managers. At any given time, they can change, clarify, or add to the process, even to distort or block policy counsel for the president. So, due to lack of funding, according to this unnamed White House official, many federal agencies are now operating more effectively from the top down with a fraction of their workforce. With only select essential personnel serving national security tasks. One might think this is how government should function, but bureaucracies operate from the bottom up, a collective of self-generated ideas. Ideas become initiatives, formalize into offices, they seek funds from Congress and become bureaus or sub-agencies, and maybe one day grow to become their own agency, which is what former Congresswoman Nan Hayworth was saying when she was here. Look, We've got to get rid of these agencies. Just, it grew up out of, nothing, and it should be dispatched into the ether. The nature of a big administrative bureaucracy is to grow to serve itself. I watch and fight it daily, he says. Now, he goes into, how bad employees actually sue because they've been called on the carpet for their lack of being good at their job, and then they get payoffs because the agency will settle and out of court with them rather than go to court to talk about how horrible an employee they are. It's cheaper to pay them off. The result is people accused of serious offenses are not charged. Rather, these self-proclaimed victims are then paid by the American taxpayers for being awful employees. So President Trump can end this abuse by reprioritizing during the extended shutdown, focusing on valuable results and weeding out the saboteurs. Anyone who's been laid off for 30 days or more can be reduced in force, what's commonly known as RIFT. Now, you can't use RIFT to get rid of a bad employee, but you can use RIFT to get rid of employees who are non-essential, whose tasks have not been performed for 30 days. My hope and prayer, and I hope you'll join me in this, we got to be praying that the president would utilize this so those employees can go into the private sector and our government can be shrunken down. That's the unintended consequence and benefit. Remember, God can work all things out for our good. He will. He'll do it. He can work this shutdown out for America's good as well. That's the show for today. Hey, you're at home on American Family Radio. We'll be back with you tomorrow, right here on this same bat station, bat channel. God bless from the heartland.